Algenon Cash, and you're locked in live once again. So, welcome back. Hopefully, some of you all were able to join us for the conversation that we just had with House Majority Whip John Hardister, talking about the order that Governor Cooper just signed, allowing mixed cocktails to go. And I know there's been some interesting reaction to that. Some small businesses are happy about it, some are not. But we did have John on this morning to talk about the order, and I would encourage you to go find that interview on the page. We did that this morning. We'll have it available on the YouTube channel a little bit later today. But today also, this is a big news week coming into Christmas, man. You got the governor giving out early Christmas presents, and Congress is giving out some Christmas presents too. They signed a $900 billion stimulus package. And of course, we had to reach out to our friend, Congressman Mark Walker, and invite him on this morning so that we can talk about this bill. So you're locked in, I'm locked in. Congressman Walker, you're locked in too. How are you, man?
Algenon, I am doing well. Always impressed by the quick response from people from the state, local, and federal level to get back to you. You must be wielding some awfully big power these days.
Well, hey, man, we're blessed, man. I'm gonna say it like that. Just blessed to have good friends, and I appreciate you and Hardister and so many people that respond and try to come on and help our audience to better understand what's going on. And like I said, there's been some early Christmas presents. You know, Governor Cooper gave out some early presents yesterday to the restaurant and bar community, and it sounds like Congress is stocking stuffers too with a $900 billion stimulus package. I guess to get started, what's your initial reaction to the bill?
As what happens in most bills, there's some good and some bad, and I think that's where the struggle is sometimes, is how much bad do you take before you eventually say, "Hey, I can't support this." And frankly, there's some decent things in there, not anything close that I felt like that was needed or exactly specifically dealing with the COVID issues to the point that I thought that should be. But there's some things, and if you want me to, I can just kind of go through a little bit of what's good and a little bit of what's bad, and then maybe go from there if that's something that works for you guys.
Yeah, yes, sir. Go right ahead.
So some of this I'll need to use my notes because, and I'll get into that as far as the process. But as far as the content, it does provide over $280 billion to reopen and strengthen the PPP program. That was a good thing. Businesses under 300 employees have had a reduction of 25% in revenue. And so these are the ones that will be eligible for a second round. Let me say that again. If your business is under 300 employees and you've had a 25% reduction in revenue, you'll be eligible for this round. It does increase the PPP loan amount for restaurants and hotels from 2.5 times the payroll to 3.5 times the payroll, which basically providing an extra month's worth of payroll support. And it does codify rules for faith-based organizations and churches to ensure eligibility remains intact. Early on, faith-based organizations were not included. Some of us pushed back on that. As far as I know you guys are focused mostly on business. Let me just hit a couple of other things, and we'll talk about some of the cons, and then maybe take some thoughts or questions. So, as far as producing and distributing a cure, nearly $20 billion is to produce vaccines and therapeutics, covering a lot of the cost. $8.75 billion for distribution of vaccines, and $3 billion for the national stockpile. Some of the controversy was as far as whether stimulus checks would be included in this. $600 was included. That's capped at $75,000 gross adjusted income per individual, or $150,000 for married couples. And of course, you had to have a valid Social Security number to qualify. There were some things also that provided some assistance and flexibility to state and localities. That was another area of controversy, is how much should be sent to cities who, through their own decision making, have had financial problems. Should you use a COVID relief bill to do that? It extends the time period from the December 30th of this year to December 30th of 2021, in which state and local recipients of the existing U.S. Treasury distribution on the CARES Act would be able to qualify. A couple of other things as far as the good, it increases the defense stability a little bit more and helps wind down some of the Federal Reserve's emergency authority. So let me get into some of the cons there. There's two things here. There's the process side, and then there's the content side. The process was as bad as anything I've ever seen in the 6 years that I have been in Congress. And here's why. You basically got to the place where your representatives had no authority or opportunity to represent their constituents. Even the committees that would normally, this would be under their jurisdiction, whether Ways and Means, Energy and Commerce, there was no say-so, whether it was the chairman's on the Democrat side or the ranking members on the Republican side. This bill was basically negotiated between Nancy Pelosi and Steve Mnuchin with a little bit of the Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, which makes it quite frustrating because representatives are there to do their job, to speak on behalf of the needs of the people they represent, whether it's business community, whether it's the healthcare or the medical community. And the frustrating part of this, and Republicans, you got to be careful that you're not being hypocritical here, because we have knocked Speaker Pelosi in the past with what she's talked about. You got to pass the bill to figure out what's in it. Well, that's exactly what happened last night. The bill was dropped. It's over 5,000 pages long that we frankly have not been able to get through all of it. And we're finding out there's a lot of interesting things in it. Some of it that I think would be considered quite negative. There's some foreign policy money that goes to different countries, Pakistan, some others, that we're trying to figure out specifically why. It's really playing in some cronyism, taking the American Energy Act, picking some winners and losers. And there's a ton of more money for the Postal Service. Some of this, I have no idea what happened, what connection it is to the COVID. These are just some things that we're finding out right now, both the process side and the content side. Members of Congress, when you're talking about adding another $1 trillion to the national debt, you should at least have the time to be able to process it, you and the staff. I'll give the staff much credit because they helped go through all of this and dig out some of it. But to say that you have 3.5 to 4 hours to go through a 55,000, nearly 500 page bill, that's problematic for me. I think it's disingenuous for me to support something. Obviously, there are some good things, and we want to see that the businesses continue to go forward. But I think if you zoom out, you say politics, DC politics cannot continue in this measure. And that's why I think it was 41 or 42% of the Republicans last night simply voted against this. Not because there wasn't some good things in it, but the overwhelming bad, and the fact that we don't even know what's in the bill yet, to me was a rush job. That's kind of a 7 or 8 minute summary, but I'm happy to take some questions on it as well, Algenon.
No, that was very good, and I think the thing I'll start with, question wise, you pointed out that it was sort of a rush job. A lot of people might be wondering, why did it actually take so long? A lot of people were looking for a stimulus package back in August, September, October, November. House Democrats would argue that they passed the HEROES Act months ago. Senate Republicans sort of blocked it. What would be your response to my audience when they say, okay, why did this take so long?
That's a great question, Algenon. Here's my assessment of it. I think members of Congress, House and Senate, when we're in the middle of a pandemic, should have the discipline to say, okay, we got a situation here. We've had a couple of good PPP tranches. Those worked well. They were specifically targeted for COVID relief, small businesses, et cetera, et cetera. Why in the world wouldn't we continue on that same path? Why did it get to the place this was a chance for everybody to kind of sneak their pet peeve in? That is the lack of discipline that we see in Washington, D.C. and in some state levels as well. And that's where there was a constant pushback and fight. To Mnuchin's credit, he was able to negotiate Pelosi way down on some of the bailout money that she wanted for some of the larger cities that have had some fiscal issues, Chicago, San Francisco, et cetera. Didn't get all of it. And that's the frustrating part. And I want to try to be straight up and not be overly partisan here, because I think your audience deserves to be informed to that level. But the fact that I do have to put some of this at Pelosi's feet is continuing to come back every single time with additional things in the potential COVID relief bill. And then the hour got late, or the backs up against the wall. Christmas is Thursday. People are struggling. So to load up this wagon, there were some Republican things in there too that are poor. So I'm not going to put all this on the Democrat side. They were like, well, if Nancy's doing it, we're going to jump in and do it. I think it's one of the great disservices that I have seen this year. The fact that we could not, I take some responsibility, put a piece of legislation together that 100% went directly to restaurants associations and small businesses, healthcare workers, frontline people, fast tracking one of the things, for example, this doesn't have it. There's no money in it for the COVID rapid testing. I thought that was one of the places that you need it most. Get in, figure out 15 minutes. You don't have to be out of work for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days. Get that turned around. It's out there. Let's put the money toward that. And the fact that that was missed, plus all these other pet projects, it's probably why people get so frustrated with Washington D.C. as a whole. But that's where I feel like it broke down. It shouldn't have taken this long. It got to the midnight hour, and everybody jumped on board with something, knowing that something had to pass at the end of the day.
You talk about the pork and the pet projects. This $900 billion stimulus package is actually going to be attached to a $1.4 trillion omnibus spending bill. Some people in my audience may not know what the omnibus spending bill is, but I'd love for you to shed light there. And then also help us understand, are the pet projects and the pork that you're describing, is that a part of the stimulus package, or is that a part of the actual spending bill?
Well, what I'm talking about so far is actually part of the COVID bill. And the problem with that is I just lost you for a second. Am I still up there? Okay, came back here. I had a little blip in the video. The 1.4 trillion that's basically to keep the federal budget completely moving forward. The president has signed a couple times what they call a CR, a couple days to make sure that they have more time. But yeah, you're looking at a $1.4 trillion, which is on top of the $900 billion is completely separate. If you add the two together, you're looking at $2.3 trillion. I think we're close. We've gone from a little over $20 trillion in national debt to $27 trillion. I won't chase that rabbit all day long, but with China now being the largest country that owns that debt, as the ranking member on intelligence and counterterrorism, I can tell you I have concerns both economically and one from a national security standpoint as well. That's why you have to streamline this. I believe the government has a role in this. I don't know, some of your viewers think that Congress should not have anything to do with the stimulus package and some of those others. I get some of that. But if the government, whether it's the federal or the state or the local level, is doing things or making decisions that negatively impact small business, even though I may not agree with those things, I feel like the government has some responsibility to build a bridge to keep those small businesses healthy.
No, I totally understand. And so again, just so that we're clear, the pet projects that you're describing in the pork is actually part of the stimulus package, not the omnibus spending bill. Now, when we talk about the actual stimulus package, I know there's some monies that was actually recycled from other programs. I know the Federal Reserve's emergency lending programs were shut down. There was money left over in the original PPP program that was created before. So how much of the spending or how much of the stimulus is actually new, fresh spending?
Talking about 300, and this is just off the top of my head, and there's a lot that I'm trying to still process. I think the new part is actually only 325 billion that is new. The rest of it is tied to what was still unspent or not been utilized. I'll have to go back to confirm that, but I think that number is pretty close, Algenon.
And then in regards to the PPP program, because this stimulus package does re-up that program. So if you're a small business or restaurant, you took a PPP loan earlier in the year, does that mean you can't participate going forward, or was that provision relaxed in the latest round?
Relaxed. I think they put a clause in there that you have to show there's been a 25% reduction in the bottom line or as your revenue. I will tell you this, and I guess it's okay to share. There was a pretty heated conference call with the Treasury Secretary and our leadership, as well as our broad membership, on Sunday afternoon. And the strongest thing that was pushed back on Mnuchin was the tax deductibility clause, and that is what blew up. And in fact, it ended up sending Mnuchin back to negotiate that with Pelosi, because there were a lot of people, and well said, listen, you're telling me that I'm going to get taxed on this, that I can't deduct this. And that was one of the things that there was some buy-in, not just buy-in, but some weigh-in, I should say, on the Republican, the GOP members to make sure they were fighting hard for small businesses.
The other thing that I've seen as I monitored social media after you all passed the bill is there's been some frustration about the direct payments. There's a $600 direct stimulus payment coming out. Not to mention, obviously, you all are extending the federal unemployment benefits for up to 10 or I think 11 weeks, $300 a week. Some people felt like the $600 falls short. They wanted more. And now, from my understanding, if it's a family of four, you could get up to $2,400, not just the $600 that would go to the individual. But for those people that say that this just felt short and they felt like that stimulus payment should be more, what would you say to them this morning?
Yeah, it's a fair question, and I understand people have struggled in different places and different things. I felt like if I would have had just a carte blanche, I would have probably said a little higher stimulus would have been appropriate. At the same time, this is a second round. If you are a family four making less than 150,000, you are correct. That's $2,400. That goes directly to the deficit, but wanting to be certainly compassionate here. But at some point, you have to ask this question: how much of a tax burden do we continue to add on our society as a whole to continue to pay and utilize things? Where do you think that money comes from? I'm not trying to be smug. Same thing for the unemployment. It wasn't the additional $600, but we have evidence to say that a lot of small businesses were hurt by the $600 amount because they simply couldn't find the employees to come back and work, whether it's part-time or full-time. Some are making $400 or $500 going to school, what have you. They were making $600 a week on top of the state amount. And they simply just said, you know what incentive is it for me to come back? So I think the $300 is a more appropriate number to make sure that people and small businesses aren't damaged and they don't get wiped out specifically over the next 2 to 3 weeks for needing the employees to get through the holidays.
No, I would agree. I think when you all set the federal unemployment payment at $600, and then you're getting another $350 from the state of North Carolina on top of that. So now you're asking small restaurant guys like me to compete with the government in terms of paying employees. And I do believe that a lot of small businesses, including my own, found that to be, we just couldn't compete. And it became very difficult to attract workers back into the restaurant simply because they were making a lot more money not to work. And so I do agree that provision needed to be more balanced out. Before I let you go, you talked about $27 trillion in debt. This is another almost $1 trillion stimulus bill on top of the trillion that was done earlier this year. Another 1.4 trillion in just ordinary spending to the government. All these numbers start to add up quickly, but I'm also hearing, I know, Congressman, you're getting ready to be on your way out of the House, but I am hearing that the new administration coming in is already asking for another large stimulus. They haven't even gotten sworn in yet. Any early predictions? Will we see another large stimulus package come winding through DC in the first part of 2021?
Well, that depends a lot on Georgia. So we'll see how those two Senate races go. If they do go, and let me say this, Democratic, and I'm not ashamed to say that's going to be, in my opinion, there'll be no checks and balances on Nancy Pelosi directly to Chuck Schumer, directly to the administration. I'm considered a fiscal hawk. I will make decisions and vote for bills sometimes, like I have the first 3 tranches of the pages of the PPP. But my gosh, people, we've got to be concerned about this long term. What kind of tax burden are we leaving to our children and grandchildren if we continue to spend? And this goes to this current administration as well as to the incoming. There's no self-righteous posing right now, because a lot of the I think it's $6 trillion since President Obama left that we've added. I know we've been through pandemics and understand that some of that's compassion. I get it. But at some point, when do we care enough to get our fiscal house in order? I think that's a concern. And as you know, that's one of the reasons that I'm running for the United States Senate, to bring some kind of fiscal house order and Senate order, as well as the overall government in 2022.
Congressman, as always, man, I appreciate you being here with me. This was just, I promised you I wasn't going to keep you for the full show. We're going to do a short segment. I know you got a lot of work to do up there, and I know y'all are still trying to digest that large package. I did see online, I got to ask you this while I've got you, I did see online that you thought you might have got exposed to COVID. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I just feel like that it's my duty to take precautionary measures. If somebody calls me and say, hey, I was in a meeting with you today and I've got a worker or family member that's tested positive, I just have to, I don't need to be getting on an airplane. And I just felt like, you know what, we'll submit this in writing. But I want to make sure to do due diligence that if that's the situation, I feel great. Looking forward to having a great Christmas. And we'll watch this for a day or two and make sure we're good. But thanks for asking.
Well, no, that's great. We always thinking about you. And for my audience, you heard him mention, that's right, Congressman Mark Walker is retiring from the House, but he's not retiring from representing you. He wants your vote in 2022. He's running for North Carolina as the senator from North Carolina. We did have Congressman Walker back on a few weeks ago. We did an interview with him right after he announced. Go check that out. That video is available here on the Facebook page as well as YouTube. Go share it with a friend. And Congressman, I think they can go like your page to stay up to speed with all your updates coming out of the campaign, right?
That is correct. Thank you so much. And I appreciate always that. Thank you for what you do to making sure our community stays informed. You do great work.
Thank you again, Congressman, for locking in. And for all of you all, until next time, y'all stay locked in. All right, Congressman, we are clear. Thank you, man, for doing that. That was really helpful.